Can't do this just yet.
Hi guys, pretty new here. So this is my new video about a new build archetype, Animate Guardian Armor Stagger. So what does this build highlight? First of all, it is something very new and very fun as well, and it is also off meta, but still very strong. It has extremely high DPS. With less than 100 divines, you can reach 300 millions. And if you have 1 mirrors or more, you can push it to 1 billion. And these numbers are not POB warrior. So you can see from the configs, no custom modifiers, 30% shock, taunted, intimidated, unconsidered ground, and linked. And nothing else surprising. And also for skills, I didn't check the modem shell, so which will change the HP dramatically. And I didn't check the ball haste, which will definitely boost our DPS. It has okayish defense, so we have 90% RS, element immune, 25 to 6k armor, fizz reduction from different sources, and endurance charges. We also went CI, so we are chaos immune. We also have 700 plus ES region. Besides that, we have 85% to 175% movement speed. However, there are still some downsides here. First of all, it is high budget. So right now I spent 50 divines with this off meta thing. So if this video get popular, it can cost more. Second, it's a bit clunky, which means that you need to resummon the AG every 20 seconds. The reason is because of the Mother's Embrace, the core build, forward build. What it does is that, first of all, your minions have 40% reduced flask charges used, which is great. It also has up to 80% increased flask duration, which means that your AG can have very consistent flask effect. However, your minions only use your flasks when summoned. But the question is, how do we summon the AG? It is actually tricky. So we have the icon here, right? If you think we just click the icon and it can resummon, no. You click, it just walk here. So that is the tricky part. So how do you actually resummon it? How do you actually summon it? So you need to unsocket the gem and it's gone. And then you summon it and it uses the flasks. But it's actually not practical to unsocket the gem. So another solution we have is weapon swap. So weapon swap, it's gone, and then you summon and you use the flask. So that's how we do it. It's definitely a little bit clunky, right? You need to do this every 20 seconds because the flask lasts around 20 seconds. One more thing is that it also takes around 2 seconds for it to actually stand up, to spawn and stand up. So that's the second downside. There is definitely a solution for that. So I also introduced another different version called QOL version. So you do not need to resummon it. We will talk about that later. And then it also has many buttons to actually maximize the DPS. So we already have like 7 buttons, and we have 2 more, Enduring Cry and Convocation. Though we do not use the Convocation that frequently, but there's much buttons. However, actually most of them are only needed for bosses. So in normal mapping, you don't need to click that often. Lastly, Bob, that's what we call the IG. Sometimes it's not so smart, which means that sometimes it tries to target an enemy. However, if it does not reach that enemy, for example, if it is blocked by other enemies, then it will just stuck there and it won't attack. It just will stuck and just still trying to find a way to reach that enemy. So that can be annoying. However, we also have solutions, and it is to let him face. So which means that once he can face, he will not be blocked by anything, so he can just kill that enemy. And we can use the Quaz flask to let him face. So that's all about the downside for this build. Feel free to opt out if you feel some of them are too much for you. So this is the build rating. So for DPS, it is definitely S+. For defense, it is okay-ish. For fun, it is so much fun. Map speed, okay. Content visibility, B+. The reason is because it actually can do a lot of content, but you really care about the servability of your AG. You do not want it to die and you need to buy everything again for his gears. So that's why till now I do not dare to challenge some super hard Uber bosses such as Uber Maven. It can disable the healing, so which is very dangerous. For QOL, I should put it a B here because of the clunkiness. However, with the QOL version I will introduce later, it can be A here, so I put a B+. For budget, B-, so it's not starter friendly and you do need some device to make it work. For Ascendancy, for this league we went Paladin because of the 40% aura effect, which is significant, and 45% increased damage taken for enemies from the Ascendancy nodes. So in a normal league, champion should also work similarly. So it's not exclusive only to this league. Now let's jump into the core mechanic for this build. So first of all, why Bob armor stacking? First of all, it has very high armor base. With level 33 AG gem, it has around 40k as base armor, which can be scaled later. And we also leverage the grasping mail for the mod armor increased by overcapped fire rest, so we can just scale that fire rest to scale his armor. Optimally, there is another available mod from the grasping mail, critical chance increased by overcapped lightning rest. However, it is a luxury to have both mods. You can try to use combinators, which might work, but it is too much for me. And then we will buff the armor or the fire rest with auras. And for our auras, we have 120% plus increased effect. We will also buff everything with the flasks, and we will have 70% increased flask effect from the enchantment. There's a game changer here is that even though we enchanted with a 30% increased effect, but it said gain no charges during effect. However, when used on minions, it's not used on you, so it can still gain charges during effect. So that's why it makes it possible to nearly have a mage blood setup for your AG. So in total, we can have the AG to reach around 1 million armor, which means around 4k increased damage with Replica Dream Feather. So second, we come to the topic about aura stacking. So basically from our player side, we want to stack the mana reservation and aura effect as much as possible. So what auras do we actually use? So first of all, determination, which is more armor, and purity of element, it increased auras, which included the fire rest that we need to increase the armor. And also it provide element immune, which is great. Purity of fire, which is also self-explanatory, and also provide max fire rest. Haste, attack speed and movement speed, which is critical. Precision, accuracy and critical chance. Discipline, so this is mainly for the player, so provide more ES for the player. Last but not least, Pyroclast Mind of Sabotage. So with level 30, so we can scale that by the March of the Legion boots and Empower. So you can see it's level 30. It can provide up to around 4k added flat fire damage, which is crazy. And all these auras actually also benefit us players tremendously. So determination, of course, purity of elements. It has auras, so we only need a very little resistance from our gears. And the element immune is also huge. And purity of fire, it has max fire rest. And with melting of flesh, we can reach 90% RS easily. And from haste, we can just mapping fast. From precision, the accuracy actually help with the smite. So we also have a smite to provide additional added lightning damage, which can also shock the enemies, right? But without precision, the hit chance is only around 60%. So that's why we need precision. And discipline, of course, is huge for our ES to reach the 5k when we link. So talking about auras, now it comes to flask. So we have slot 1, Basalt, which gives more armor, and for Surface, you can also get increased armor. Then Server, which gives you Onslaught with increased effect. And also we can get additional Ally-Res as a suffix. For Diamond, increased critical chance, and with suffix also increased critical chance. For Bismuth, so this provides auras, which include the fire rest that we need to increase the armor. There are two versions. For mapping, you use Ariath End for explosions, and for bossing, you just use Wise Oak for the penetration. For the last slot, there are also two versions. So for mapping, you use Pulse, which is here, for phasing, for the AG's phasing. And for bossing, you use Bottled Faith, which has crazy damage boost. So let's actually check like how much Flask can do. So you can see this is with all the flasks, and it has 300 million, but without all of them, it only has around 70 million. So it is around like, it gives more than 4 times of the damage. So now we are able to explain like why AG's offense is so high. So first of all, we have huge flat damage from all sources, like from Mines, Smite, Flame Link, and the Replica Abysses from the AG. And from 1 million armor, it gives 4k increased damage. And we also have 10 link, or you can call it 11 link setup with this one-handed weapon and Squire. AG also has around close to 100% crit chance from flasks, precision, and power charges from the Relic Catches Impatience boot. It has 150 increased attack speed from flask, haste, and frenzy charge from the Relic Catches Impatience boots. For enemies, element resistance reduction, we have Curse, Wise Oak, and Fire Exposure. And enemies also has around 85% increased damage taken, 45% from our sanity, 30 from shock and 10% from intimidate. We might also care a little bit about AG's defense. We don't want to lose them. So for AG, it has around 23k life pool, 1 million armor, high res and capped chaos res, 42% chance to block attack and spell, and 2% life recovery when block. And also it has life leech and some life regen. For player's defense, so I screenshot 2 setups. So on the left is our normal setup, and on the right side is the QOL setup. I will introduce later. So for normal setup, we have 65k EHP and around 11k Phys max hit, which is okay-ish but not amazing. For the QOL setup, it has 4k EHP and 70k Phys max hit, so which is much better. So for the stats, we have 5k ES pool, 90% RS with melting of flesh, purifier with increased aura effect, and 2 rare jewels with 2% increased maximum fire res each. We have 25k armor and around 15% Phys reduction from different sources, Watcher's Eye and body armor. We also have 100% endurance charge all time from our ascendancy. We have Molten Shell and 700 plus ES regen. Okay, now let's come to the QOL version if you don't like the clunkiness of the previous version. So which features that? First of all, you do not need to resummon anything. You just link to it and it can kill everything. However, the downside is that it only has half the DPS. But with flask can apply to you and very high uptime. You are much tankier and you are much faster. So this is more like mapping oriented. So what actually does this new version change? Actually not much. So first of all, you change the belt from Mother's Embrace to a rare belt, mostly focus on defense mods and flask related mods. And you need to change one ascendancy. So enemies take 25% increased ally damage. Change this to another node 40% flask effect on you, and more importantly, it can also apply to link targets. Also, you need some flasks changes. So because this ascendancy node, it's only limited to non-unique utility flasks. So which means that you cannot use Ariath, Wise Oak, or Bottle of Faith. You need to replace with all utility flasks. And also for the enchantment, you cannot use 30% increased effect anymore. And you will replace that with use when reach full. The reason is because now the flask applies to you as well, so you cannot gain charges with this enchant. And this is a comparison between the two versions. So for quality of life, definitely this is A and this is B, but defense side, it only has half the DPS. But for EHP, you can see it has 17k Phys max hit, and for movement speed, it has 176% plus. So in a word, it has half DPS, but DPS is enough, still enough for mapping. It has much better EHP and movement speed. So that's all about the builds, and I'd like to point out some important things here. So first of all, to address it, I do not recommend one-to-one copy, which will be extremely expensive. So if you want to try this, I suggest you to do a market research first and plan ahead. I may follow up with a low budget version or a video about gearing and how you can save money if it is needed. And when resummon AG, try not to click on top of identified items that is dropped when mapping. Because if you click the button on top of the identified items, it will just replace your own items of the IG. However, actually this situation rarely happens in normal content, and you can also use very strict filter to hide the identified items. And then facing is actually very important for mapping for both player and AG. So for player, you can use Watcher's Eye facing by haste. However, this is not needed for the QOL version because you can also share the quas flask. And lastly, do not use other minions. The reason is because you can mistakenly link to wrong minions, and it can be very annoying. And sometimes it can be deadly if the minion dies or expires. Yes, minion expiring can also kill you. About gearing gems skill tree, unfortunately, it is still work in progress. I think there's too much to cover. However, I will provide 3 POB versions for reference. One is the version I'm using. I call it performance version, and then QOL version, and also max budget and DPS version where you can reach 1 billion DPS. Some final thoughts. First of all, for me, this is a very exciting project. It's something totally new and fun. However, the process is actually tough. There are a lot of challenges to resolve and to optimize. But finally, we did it. I also found one Reddit post about it, like this one, 6 months ago. I think he's using Champion. We are sharing similar idea, though we are building in quite different path. And also now we are introducing a new build archetype in the build market, though it is not starter friendly. And lastly, I hope GGG can buff link skills, specifically for the QOL aspects. For example, we can make the link permanent, we can make it toggleable, and also I don't think minions expiring should kill the owner. So that's about it. It's a quite, for me, it looks like quite a complex build, but it should be easy to follow. But let me know if you have any questions or comments, and thanks for watching.